So here he is explaining and setting the context for the rest of the collection. The pieces in this volume were written over time for the New Yorker and are the result of my earliest enthusiasms. In every case I encountered these artists in late career. The voices had weathered. In nearly every case, the best songs and the best performances were well in the past. They were all grappling in music and in their own lives with their diminishing gifts and mortality. Yet there was never any diminishment in the desire to make music, to hold the note. Just as I was collecting these pieces, one songwriter and performer who had long dodged my requests to meet with her, Joni Mitchell, emerged at the Newport Folk Festival to play her first full set of music in 2 decades. Mitchell had been dealing for years with various ailments. In 2015, she suffered a brain aneurysm that nearly killed her. When she was a child, polio left her unable to walk for a while. But as she told a reporter, the aneurysm took away a lot more, really. It took away my speech and my ability to walk. And you know, I got my speech back quickly, but the walking, I'm still struggling with. Mitchell warmed up to playing again in public slowly. She began hosting private jams, Joni jams, at her house in Los Angeles. Randy Carlile, Paul McCartney, Chaka Khan, Bonnie Raitt, Herbie Hancock and others came to play, to talk, to sing. At Newport, a festival she had last played in 1969, Mitchell took the stage in front of 10,000 people and was surrounded by a raft of musicians, including Carlile, Celise Henderson, Winona Judd and Blake Mills. She sat in a magnificently garish armchair and sang a full set from Carey to The Circle Game. She pleased herself with songs from her own past. Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Gershwin's Summertime, The Clovers' Love Potion No. 9. Her voice was far deeper than it was when she recorded Blue, her masterpiece, but Brandy Carlile was there to provide the soprano filigree. Celise Henderson, playing guitar with the attack of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, delighted Joni with a uniquely jagged version of Help Me. Mitchell loved it all. The crowd, the companionship on stage, the sheer aliveness of the moment. And in the end, from the open air of Newport to the rest of us getting the full report on YouTube, it was the spectacle of Joni, determined and joyful, singing Both Sides Now, that left every listener not just moved and grateful, but altered. But now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads. They say I've changed. Something lost, but something's gained in living every day. A young woman's song written in 1966, after she'd read Henderson the Rain King on a flight above a bank of clouds, had reshaped itself. Something was lost. Something was gained. And I'll just go on to page 1. I hadn't prepared any further than this, but on a quick skim, I think this works. His first essay is called How the Light Gets In, and it's about, of course, Leonard Cohen. When Leonard Cohen was 25, he was living in London, sitting in cold rooms, writing sad poems. He got by on a $3,000 grant from the Canada Council for the Arts. This was 1960, long before he played the festival at the Isle of Wight in front of 600,000 people. In those days, he was a Jamesian Jew, the provincial abroad, a refugee from the Montreal literary scene. Cohen, whose family was both prominent and cultivated, had an ironical view of himself. He was a bohemian with a cushion, whose first purchases in London were an Olivetti typewriter and a blue raincoat at Burberry. Even before he had much of an audience, he had a distinct idea of the audience he wanted. In a letter to his publisher, he said that he was out to reach inner-directed adolescents, lovers in all degrees of anguish, disappointed Platonists, pornography peepers, hare-handed monks, and popists. Cohen was growing weary of London's rising damp and its grey skies. An English dentist had just yanked one of his wisdom teeth. After weeks of cold and rain, he wandered into a bank and asked the teller about his deep suntan. The teller said he'd just returned from a trip to Greece. Cohen bought an airline ticket. Not long afterward, he alighted in Athens, visited the Acropolis, made his way to the port of Piraeus, boarded a ferry and disembarked at the island of Hydra. With the chill barely out of his bones, He took in the horseshoe-shaped harbour, the people drinking cold glasses of Retsina and eating grilled fish in the cafes by the water. He looked up at the pines and the cypress trees and the whitewashed houses that crept up the hillsides. There was something mythical and primitive about Hydra. Cars were forbidden. Mules humped water up the long stairways to the houses. There was only intermittent electricity. Cohen rented a place for $14 a month. Eventually, he bought a whitewashed house of his own for $1,500, thanks to an inheritance from his grandmother. Hydra promised the life Cohen had craved: spare rooms, the empty page, Eros after dark. He collected a few paraffin lamps and some used furniture, a Russian wrought iron bed, a writing table, chairs like the chairs that Van Gogh painted. During the day, he worked on a sexy phantasmagoric novel called The Favourite Game, and the poems in a collection titled Flowers for Hitler. He alternated between extreme discipline and the varieties of abandon. There were days of fasting to concentrate the mind. There were drugs to expand it: pot, acid, speed. I took trip after trip sitting in my terrace in Greece, waiting to see God, he said years later. Generally, I ended up with a bad hangover. Here and there, Cohen caught glimpses of a beautiful Norwegian woman. Her name was Marianne Ehlen, and she'd grown up in the countryside near Oslo. Her grandmother used to tell her, "You are going to meet a man who speaks with a tongue of gold." She thought she already had. Axel Jensen, a novelist from home, who wrote in the tradition of Jack Kerouac and William Burroughs. She'd married Jensen, and they had a little son, Axel. Jensen was not a constant husband, however, and by the time their child was 4 months old, Jensen was, as Marianne put it, over the hills again with another woman. One spring day, Ehlen was with her infant son in a grocery store and cafe. "I was standing in the shop with my basket, waiting to pick up bottled water and milk," she recalled decades later on a Norwegian radio program. "He's standing in the doorway with the sun behind him." Cohen asked her to join him and his friends outside. He was wearing khaki pants, sneakers, a shirt with rolled sleeves, and a cap. The way Marianne remembered it, he seemed to radiate enormous compassion for me and my child. She was taken with him. I felt it throughout my body, she said. A lightness had come over me. And that's Cohen's Marianne, and I'll leave it there till next time. Thank you.